Hey folks, I hope everybody's having a great Sunday. Wanted to make a video today on a comment that was left on one of my YouTube shorts, and I wanted to dive into it. I think that would make a great discussion point. If you're new to this channel, I'm tackling a lot of issues that we find in the church and Christianity as a whole, and trying to make our faith reasonable, trying to put all the light on Jesus and put aside all those things that are of religion that keep us away from following Christ. So thank you for joining. And in the end, if you guys like this video, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. Okay, so the comment that was left behind was somebody who was questioning the fact that we see Jesus as a nonviolent person. We see Jesus as somebody who calls us to peace. And this person commented out of Gospel of Luke. And this was in chapter 22. And they commented verse 36. And he said to them, this is talking about Jesus, "But now, if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one." So this person was replying back to my video that I said that, Jesus calls us to peace, and that, Jesus called us to a higher standard above the Mosaic law, which taught us an eye for an eye. But Jesus taught us to turn the other cheek. Jesus taught us to lay down our lives, to pray for enemies, to love our enemies. And ultimately, my argument is that Jesus is displaying with his own life the things that he taught, where he laid his life down at the hands of his enemies. You have to remember that he was a Jew, and the Roman Empire was, an occupant. They had all of the land of Israel occupied by the Romans. So the tensions were high during Jesus' time. There were a lot of talks of gaining that territory back, and that's why they were waiting for Messiah to fight that battle to get their land back. But Jesus was not the Messiah they were expecting. Jesus taught everybody that if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. But this passage was quoted to me, and I wanted to, expand on it, because if you take it out of context, you can pretty much justify and say that, well, Jesus is okay with us, buying a sword, or with us, buying a gun, or whatever it might be, because obviously we would have to use it if Jesus tells us to buy it. So there's that. So two issues I wanted to point out. One issue is that when we have passages like this that obviously contradict other passages, where, like I mentioned earlier, where Jesus said that if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. Another passage is when, and I'll get into it here, but when Peter struck the soldier with his sword and cut his ear off, he said, "Put away your sword." So for those people who quote passages that contradict other passages, you can't just quote something that fits your narrative. You have to explain what to do with the one that says something else. And see, when I approach difficult issues like this, if there's a way to explain it by, actually reading within the context, I will do that. If there isn't, then I will look at the greater picture and kind of zoom out. Instead of looking at a detail, zoom out and see as a whole, what the picture is that we're talking about. So those people who are using this verse, please explain to me where Jesus says, we're not to live by the sword. Explain where he says that, we are to love our enemies. See, you can't really love your enemies when you're swinging a sword. If you say that you love your brother, or you love your mother, or your father, or your spouse, do you see yourself swinging a sword at them? And I don't. I mean, I think that's pretty clear there. It's kind of common sense. So there's that. So there's obviously something about this verse that we need to dive into. But the bigger picture is the fact that as a whole in Jesus, we see a person who is nonviolent. We see a person who lays his life down at the hands of his enemies. And then when God does raise him back from the dead, he doesn't come back with a swinging sword to take out his enemies. We don't see that at all. He says, "Peace I bring you." So as a whole, character of Jesus cannot be defined by somebody who's swinging a sword. And that also goes in to say about all these images that we're hearing about, where when Jesus comes back, he's going to be swinging a sword. This is misunderstanding of some of the passages that we find in the book of Revelation, which again, this is not, the Revelation is not the gospel. It's a very cryptic book that we have to understand is not like a literal explanation of things to come. But we'll get into that in a different video. But on this, going back to this Gospel Luke 22, if you keep reading verse 37, it actually explains why he said this. He's quoting, "It is written, and he was numbered with transgressors. And I tell you that this must be fulfilled in me. Yes, what is written about me is reaching its fulfillment." The disciples said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords. That's enough." And you see that exclamation point there? He replied. And then we have the story of, Jesus going into Mount Olives, and then he's praying, and, he's asking everybody to pray with him. And then he gets arrested. And then this is what's going on here. "And when Jesus' followers saw that what was going on to happen, they said, 'Lord, should we strike with our swords?' And one of them struck the servant of a high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, 'No more of this.' And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and elders who had come to him, Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in temple courts, and you did not lay hand on me. But this is your hour when the darkness reigns." I think it's pretty clear that Jesus was not happy with them swinging those swords. And it's interesting that, Jesus felt that he had to fulfill some kind of Bible passage in the Old Testament. But, that's a different discussion. But we see that when they actually do use the sword, he says, "That's enough. Like, put your swords away." And he goes on and he heals the ear of this person who's there to help to make the arrest. To me, that's a very, very clear picture of the nature of Jesus and the nature of God. Because again, going back to it, we only see God in Jesus. Nobody's ever seen God before Jesus. So, this video, again, if you guys agree with this, if you have questions, if you think I'm misquoting something, please leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to dwell more into it. But I think as of right now, it's pretty clear just within the context that, Jesus' reason for getting swords was not to start a revolution. Obviously, he wanted to maybe even use this as a way to display who he is. Maybe he knew the temperament of Peter, the fact that he will swing a sword, and it gave a chance again for Jesus to display his nature, which is the nature of a healer, not of somebody who's full of violence. So I hope you like this. If you have any questions, like I said, leave a comment below, and have a blessed day. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you.